If there's one lesson that can be taken from Trump's election victory, it's that the more you try to shut down illiberal views in the media, the more energy you give them. When it comes to criticising newspapers that peddle divisive and irresponsible journalism, I am at the front of the queue. But the way to do that is to have the argument, not to shut it down.
This is a very nuanced debate, I think, because on one hand you've got freedom of the press, and are they reporting what people are feeling? Are they just a reflection of society? Or are they encouraging and forming people's views and fueling that debate? In terms of advertising and the ethics behind, you know, the stuff we buy, it depends how far you go down the line of checking the provenance of your food, the ethical values of the clothes that you buy and where those are sourced from. And then it's down to individual choices. But I think whilst it's a campaign I'm not particularly against, I just think, hang on, is it a bit of bandwagon jumping in the sense that, you know, if you've got that higher sort of value, should you not have had that years ago? If we're talking specifically about Lego, you know, it was OK until very recently for them to continue advertising with the Daily Mail, but suddenly now we're going to stop doing that. I would say, in defence of the campaign, I think that recently lines have been crossed in the press that I don't remember seeing before. I mean, for example, the way that the judges who ruled in favour of Article 50 were treated, I don't remember seeing anything like that in my lifetime, and I actually never thought I would live to see anything like that in this country. But I think, let me finish. I think that we should all be uncomfortable with the idea of advertisers influencing editorial positions on newspapers. That instinctively, I'm not comfortable with that. And then the second thing I think to say is that there is a line, right? We have criminal law against incitement to hate. So any publication that crosses that line already faces sanctions. The big issue is the grey space, right? Yeah. And I think there's been a lot in the grey space, but I feel that just kind of trying to shut it down is not going to get rid of the problem. Can I just say something quickly before you come in? Also, advertisers can influence papers for good as well. I mean, if you go back historically where newspapers were far more partisan, I mean, you know, long time ago, partisan, small sort of rags that needed, in order to increase their readership, they needed to get advertising on board. Now, advertising can actually have a benefit, can encourage better reporting, can encourage the debate. It doesn't always necessarily mean that they're controlling it for lack of freedom.
As somebody who's been a reporter, I feel really uncomfortable about the idea of reporting something with what an advertiser thinks in my mind. I think you need to approach that. You need to approach that with the pure pursuit of truth and balance, not thinking about commercial factors.
That's where I went wrong in my
and
career.
Nick comes in, there's one more thing I want to say. I think this is an interesting time, and it's nuanced exactly like you said, for so many reasons. But one thing I think is that actually the right has shown it's instinctively not in favour of freedom of speech all the time. I mean, look at what happened to Gary Lineker. You know, when Gary Lineker came out and said what he said about refugees, the treatment by some towards these young refugees is hideously racist. The Sun, what did The Sun do? They called for him to be kicked off the air.
I know.
I mean, what kind of defence of free speech is that, you know? And I think actually this is the time for those of us who genuinely believe in liberal values to show our higher moral ground by saying we don't want to shut down the debate. And actually, yes, there are people with a real sense of grievance. Let's understand it. That doesn't mean that we should legitimise racism or xenophobia or misogyny, but let's at least talk to each other. Yeah. Nick, on which note?
What did they do about the judges that upset you so much?
Seriously?
Yeah, what's the matter with it?
Do you believe in the separation of powers? Do you believe that the judiciary should be independent?
Judges have an extraordinary position of privilege. If they make rulings that perhaps want to be called into question, we have every right to do.
Why were they being called into question?
I don't think there's anything wrong with criticising a judgment. I don't think there's anything wrong with critically analysing a judgment. But I think that personally attacking judges, putting their photos and their sexual orientations in the paper, that is vilifying them. Judges are not allowed to respond. And if judges start in the back of their mind to have the threat, if judges start in the back of their mind to have recourse to the threat that if they rule in a certain way, their private lives are going to be pilloried all over the press, that could influence them. And that is the beginning of the end of our democracy. And that's no exaggeration. Our whole democracy rests on that. So how could you be in favour of Brexit to preserve British sovereignty and then be quite happy to ride roughshod over the independence of the judiciary? That's what Britain is about. That's British values.
Judges are wholly unaccountable. They can let people out who then go off and rape and murder and God knows what else. They get the sentences wrong. They get the verdicts.
That's why
they never ever have to.
That's why we have a system of appeals.
Yeah, but change the system.
Well, we've had the system in place for a very long time, and it's kind of worked.
We've gone all over the world. And I remember you defending the empire on this programme.
Yes,
we've gone all over the world spreading this enlightened system of the independent judiciary. It's a core part of what Britishness is.
But I think advertisers, to echo in some ways your point, advertisers influencing editorial direction is completely wrong, because today you've got Lego pulling out because they don't like conversations around the refugees and Brexit. What will you have tomorrow? Will you have a bank pulling out all of the funding because they don't like an investigation that's happening into some of their practices? Where will it stop? So I'm completely against what they're doing. And I also think if you take the advertising away, because as a business you have an advertising spend, you're putting some of it into print media. If you take that away, where are you going to put it? So people will argue, OK, I'm going to put it onto Facebook. Now, one of the things that we've already seen with this election, for example, is the whole echo chamber and fake news and all the rest of it. So as a business, you need to be really thinking about where am I advertising your brand? And you should be wanting your brand to reach as many different people as you possibly can. And for that reason as well, I think that this campaign is not the right thing to be doing.
Believe it. I agree with Michelle.
Can I just say that I do think that what Gary Lineker has done is really the sort of start of the way things are going. If you look at all the data around millennials now expect the companies that they support and they buy from to have a social mission, which is why we're seeing the rise of fair trade and one for one and that model.
How many millennials buy the Daily Mail or the Sun? In all honesty,
female.
I think you're ascribing too much power.
No, I don't know any woman who doesn't look at the Kardashians on female.
But what I'm saying, Nick, is long term. We're not just talking about now. I'm saying if those newspapers want to survive in the future, the mindset of the new generation that are coming through is very different to ours and the older generation. So actually, Gary Lineker may have done them a favour in the long run.
Yeah, but ultimately, it's still about a commercial relationship. So if it's in a company's interest, commercial interest, to advertise on a certain platform, they're going to do that. We've seen it. You know, for a long time. Of course, corporate governance has got better.
What I'm saying is that there's a new generation that will prove that actually it won't be in their commercial interest.
But that's what I would like. I would like people to vote with their feet, exactly. Yeah. So I would be thrilled if people stop buying the Mail because they're unhappy about some of those headlines.
But surely it starts with products.
I'm uncomfortable with it coming from a campaign to target advertising, because I think that it's right for papers to respond to their readers, but to respond to corporate interests, like Michelle said, I think that could.
The Daily Mail is a tremendous newspaper that sells very well because it's professionally put together and it knows its reader like that.
And finally, let's not forget, by the way, that a lot of people agree with some of the things that they say.